We're going to talk today about building the future, and we can't talk about building the future unless we talk about adapting to the climate that we find ourselves in. I'm not sure where I aim this, but how do I do that? Got it. All right. So everyone knows that climate change is real and that California's commitment to curbing carbon emissions is real too. And yet, as serious as the threat of climate change is to our quality of life and our standard of living, not just here in Los Angeles, but all over the world, there's an even more urgent threat that faces us: a toxic political climate that threatens to upend in a weekend or in 10 days all that we believe in, all that we are able to look back on as a legacy of governing ourselves, a time of real crisis. I'm going to argue that this is not a time for business as usual, that, as the Chinese say, every crisis comes with two aspects. In Chinese, the word for crisis is expressed with two characters, one signifying danger and the other opportunity. And I think that this is a time of great opportunity, but also a time of great danger for Los Angeles and beyond. Los Angeles is not just a place. It is an idea. It is a brand. It is the centerpiece of the California dream. It is a place that has such extraordinary influence across the globe because of the power of the media and the power of story that is born here and that we celebrate with the Academy Awards and so many other events like the Grammys that demonstrate our global ability to influence how people look at the world and look at the places that they live. We also live in a time when people are confronting the most serious inequality in the economic sphere since the 1920s triggered the Great Depression, a time when all over the world people are questioning whether it is possible to have coexistence between democracy and billionaires, between global poverty on one side of a wall and an ability to try to maintain prosperity on the other side of a wall. Let me go backwards. I don't know if I can go backwards. So let me talk for a moment about Michael Storper's books. How many have read the book, The Rise and Fall of Urban Democracies, Lessons from San Francisco and Los Angeles? The most important book written in the last 10 years about California by a professor here at UCLA, and no one has read anything more than the op-ed piece in the LA Times. The lessons that need to be learned from this book are profound. When in 1970, San Francisco and Los Angeles had the same household income. Now, today, while they're #1 in the country, we have fallen to 25th. The average household income in San Francisco is $62,000. Here in the Los Angeles area, it's $40,000. That is a profound difference. We've allowed ourselves to lag, and Storper points out it is not just because of the law of averages that you divide the billionaires, that in fact in every demographic, in every ethnic group, San Francisco has a similar lead. Even among poor immigrants from Latin America, poor Latin American immigrants do 50% better in the San Francisco Bay Area than they do right here. That can't be explained just by the fact that Google and Facebook are doing well. So we do have to face the fact that there was a shortcoming of civic leadership. Now, a lot of people look back with nostalgia to the good old days of the Committee of 25, when white male Republicans ran the city and got things done. We still need leadership, but we don't need a committee of 25 to run Los Angeles. We need the 10 million people here to take responsibility, but they need leadership to begin to articulate the serious challenges that face us and to face up to them. And as Phil Washington said, and as Mayor Butts said, and as Renata Zimmerl said, this is an extraordinary moment for Los Angeles. We actually have the ability right now to seize on this great opportunity of the downtown revitalization, of the emergence of Silicon Beach and tech all across our region, of the completion of 100 miles of a rail network that, as Phil pointed out, is now going to really begin to knit our region together. UCLA will be joined in, USC already is, LAX soon will be, the San Gabriel Valley, all the way ultimately out to the Ontario Airport. Long Beach, all of them are now beginning to knit together with the completion of a route down the 405. It's an extraordinary, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The LA River revitalization, the potential of the LA 24 bid, all of these things are pregnant with possibility if we have the leadership and the vision and the courage to seize those and the wisdom to make the most of this opportunity. Tom Bradley did that in 1984. Our greatest mayor, a mayor who brought this community together and laid the foundation for the success of diversity. He capitalized on the 1984 Games not simply as 2 weeks to celebrate what's fun in the sun, but rather to, as Renata just said, to elevate the brand, to continue to build on the idea that Los Angeles is where the future is invented. Now, the blind spot in the vision that Tom Bradley articulated, the blind spot that exploded in the 1992 riots, was we failed to bring the neighborhoods to the south of the glittering towers in Los Angeles into the success that was celebrated in 1984. We cannot make that mistake again. That is the essence of why we lag the Bay Area. We have failed to include people who have come here seeking to be part of this dream, seeking to work hard and to build a future for themselves and their children. They have to be part of our success. We cannot afford to leave anyone behind again. We have to invest in their education. The single most important indicator of our success for the 6th largest economy in the world will be the college graduation rate of Latinos in California. If we fail to include the people who've come here, the dreamers who've come here to build this state for its next generation, there will be very little left of the California dream. We have to double down on diversity. The President of the United States has squandered every shred of goodwill that he earned by being elected President of the United States within the first 10 days of his administration by turning his back on the very essence of what makes America great, of what stands behind the Statue of Liberty, that we are here to welcome the huddled masses yearning to breathe free. So we have to be the counterexample in Los Angeles. We have to be the symbol of what makes America great and what will make America great in this planet. And so that dynamism that represents Los Angeles, our willingness to embrace the future, our willingness to embrace new ideas, our willingness to embrace new people, that is the entrepreneurial dynamism that drives all of you and this economy and the green economy that was showcased yesterday in VerdeXchange. We have to be proud of our dynamism. No, Los Angeles is not neat and tidy. Get over it. Los Angeles is a place where things change, not always to the good. But I am sick and tired of white males of my generation looking back on the 1950s, a time of homophobia, a time of misogyny, a time of blatant racism, and saying those were the good old days. I stood in the right field of the elementary school playground at Sierra Madre Elementary School, and you could not see the mountains because of the smog. And the tears would pour down my cheeks while I waited for that occasional fly ball that headed to right field. We are not going back to those days. We are not going back to the 50s. We are going forward to the 2050s. That's what Los Angeles is all about. Now, we have a great opportunity. Mobility is really what makes this place so special. You could throw a rock from here, and you could hit the beginning of automobility in the United States of America, the end of the Arroyo Seco Parkway, the first freeway in America. There were only two other freeways in the world. One was called the Autobahn. It was built by Adolf Hitler. The other was the Autostrada. It was built by Benito Mussolini. And we built the Arroyo Seco Parkway, showing, I guess, that democracy works. Now we're at the ground zero of a new kind of mobility, not one that's based upon a single mode of transportation, not based upon just automobiles, but based upon choice. Go Samo is our way of crystallizing that we want to give people lots of choices. We want people to be able to wake up in the morning and get their phone out and say, okay, Siri, what's the healthiest way for me to get to my appointments? What's the most sustainable way for me to get around today? What's the quickest way for me to get to where I need to go? What's the most affordable way for me to get to where I need to go? And what's the safest way for me to go? And to be able to make those choices. We were the first in the region to do bike share. In the year that it's been operational, we've had 350,000 trips in 8.3 square miles. We've covered 750,000 miles of people on our bikes, and we have 50,000 subscribers to that service, and we've done it all. We're actually making money on it as a result of the tremendous success over just the first year. That is the basis for all of the entrepreneurs in the audience. This is an opportunity for us to multiply the choices of how and improve the choices for how we get around. We're not going to widen our way out of this crisis. We are going to create creative alternatives that draw upon the tremendous entrepreneurial spirit of this region. Now, there's a tremendous amount of public investment going on, but more than that, we have to be really focused on the issue of equity. Yesterday, in a terrific panel that included Gail Goldberg and Rusty Hicks and Cecilia Estelano, tremendous discussion there. Rusty said, if it doesn't speak to the needs and goals and dreams of ordinary people, it's not sustainable. That's what we have to put to the test of every one of our policies, every one of our initiatives, every one of our plans. Are they meeting the needs of people who are raising their kids, going to work, and making Los Angeles what it is today? I believe, if you remember anything that I have said here this morning, it is the importance of us growing together. All of us need to pay attention to the people that are being left behind. In the faith tradition that I come from, Jesus says, "You helped me when I was hungry. You sheltered me when I had no home." And they asked him, "Well, we don't remember that." And he said, "As you did to the least of these, you did to me." When you put a roof over the head of someone who would be sleeping tonight without one, you are making the most profound difference that we can make. If we cannot house 42,000 people, many of them mentally ill, what kind of future do we have for the sixth largest economy in the world? We have to embrace public sector innovation. I would like to talk about this all day. I can't. But we can't solve today's problems with yesterday's answers. We have to forget about continuing to provide legacy public services because we're in the business of being in the business we're in. We have to be focused on creating public value. The entrepreneurs of 100 years ago were public sector entrepreneurs. Government used to be a leading indicator. We used to believe that government could put a person on the moon. Now we wonder if government can fill a pothole. We have got to make government lead again. We've got to make government work again. We've got to make government as tech-savvy, as nimble, as entrepreneurial as the best companies in Silicon Valley. I believe we can do it, but we have to learn from others. Los Angeles sometimes thinks, well, we're so much bigger than all the cities around us, we have nothing to learn from Santa Monica or from Long Beach or from Pasadena or from Glendale. We're so much different from Chicago and New York because they're older cities and they have strong mayors. We have nothing to learn from them. We're so more diverse than, and all the excuses. We live in a global world. We need to be open to the world, and if we're open to the world, we need to be open to learning from the world. We don't have all the answers, but we have 3 of the best educational institutions on the planet. We ought to be a place that's not afraid to learn from the rest of the planet. Christopher Hawthorne, I think, is the most eloquent voice now writing about the place we share. He talks about the third Los Angeles. The first Los Angeles predated the automobile. It was a traditional town that Americans really brought the model from the Midwest and from the East. They built a lot of brick buildings. They fell down in earthquakes. And the second Los Angeles was the one that began with the Arroyo Seco Parkway, just less than 100 yards from here. The reality is that a third Los Angeles is emerging, and it will happen because of us. We will make the third Los Angeles. Ciclavia, I think, is an example of the way in which the third Los Angeles is emerging organically from the individual dreams of people saying, we're going to take this street, we're going to close this street, we're going to own this street, we're going to celebrate being together. And if we could take that spirit and apply it 365 days a year, every street in Los Angeles would be a great street. They wouldn't all be as crowded or as bustling as the 3rd Street Promenade, but they would be greener. They would be more beautiful. They would be safer. They would be more functional. People would take back the public realm that belongs to them. Now, let's confront the elephant in the room. We can't do this with the tremendous cynicism about the way politics works in Los Angeles. I spent 2 years at LA City Hall. I know that it is better than the reputation it has. I know the individuals who work there the place would not run for 15 minutes if it weren't for the heroic effort of some enlightened elected officials and some tremendously dedicated civil servants. The systems are all broken. The hiring system, the tech systems, the procurement systems, and the only way that city works is because people will it to work. They come to work every day and they call people in some other department and say, look, I need your help. Can you cut through the red tape? Can you get this thing done? Unfortunately, that's not the way to run a great city. It's doing the best we can. But the perception of pay to play simply cannot be allowed to stand. We have to begin to build a transparent system where you understand what you can build, where you can build it, and it isn't based upon anything other than good planning. Development has become almost like a lottery. You strike it rich. If you come into a place that's zoned in 1950, you know that that's not what ought to be built there. You propose something that's 4 times bigger than what you think you're going to get because you know it's going to be cut down in the process. And sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. Sometimes you make a great deal of money. I heard a talk one time of a guy who said, yeah, I've slogged through 12 years of entitlements. Everything's done except the litigation. That's not the way to build a great city. We all know that. We all understand it. Why do we put up with it? Why don't we fix it? Do we not have it in our power to create a transparent, coherent system for planning the future of Los Angeles? Are we that much less capable than past generations? As Gail Goldberg reminds us, there are no shortcuts. You cannot do real planning by fiat, by top-down. You have to involve the people whose lives will be affected, and you have to take a look at all the things they care about. Why do people not go to public hearings? Because public hearings are that place in American society where no one listens. The way to plan Los Angeles is to think about the water, to think about the energy, to think about the schools, to think about the mobility, to come up with coherent answers about how we're going to organize this city so as people in real estate, you don't have to do that on your own. You don't have to pay money to build a playground or money to do this or cut a deal with them or cut a deal with them. You'll be able to plug into a plan and you become builders instead of developers, right? That's the way great American cities were built. You knew the rules, you played by the rules, you didn't make whopping amounts of money, but you built Baltimore and Chicago and New York and St. Louis and Portland. We need to go back to that. We need to go back to codes that are very clear about what's allowed, and those codes need to be calibrated to the kind of neighborhood it is. You ought to be able to build high-rises in downtown, and you ought not to be able to build high-rises in Studio City, right? You ought to be, at least not in the wrong place. You ought to be able to calibrate this so that the plans make sense and they're defensible, and it's not on the basis that, that people can criticize you over the political contributions that you made or shut you out because of the political contributions you didn't make. Real planning is done by real planners, right? There are 16 planning directors in the city of Los Angeles. 15 of them don't have that title. That has to end. And the people who can end it are those 15 people. It may seem in their short-term interest to be in control of their districts, but it's in the long-term shortcoming to making a great city. We need to depoliticize planning. We need to make planning predictable, transparent, and inclusive and effective. It's not. Let's admit it. Let's fix it. You have to plan with people, and you have to plan for people. There's no shortcut. The Pharaoh of Egypt, worshipped as a god on earth, had as his personal tutor the man who invented geometry, the Greek mathematician Euclid. He didn't like doing theorems. He asked Euclid, isn't there an easier way to do this? And Euclid said, "Sire, there is no royal road to geometry. There's no easy way to do planning in a city of 4 million. But look at the consequences of not doing it. We stand on the precipice of an absolutely disastrous ballot measure, and it just might pass. We have gotten ourselves into a big amount of trouble. We've got to dig ourselves out, and we have to begin by stopping to dig. Who's going to do that? I believe the people in this room are critical to that. I believe that the Urban Land Institute is a major player, not because you're going to write big checks, but because you have the caliber of expertise and the caliber of heart to change the way we do planning in Los Angeles and the 87 cities around it. We ought to be a model for the world. We ought not to put our fate gambling that people won't approve a draconian measure to stop everything for 2 years. We ought to be initiators. We ought to take the lead. We can do this. It's not hard. It just is going to take some real effort on our part. We have serious problems, and we need serious people to solve them. I believe everyone in this room is serious about a great Los Angeles, about a great California, about a great United States of America, and about a peaceful and sustainable planet. We're not going to leave my children a perfect world, but it's our responsibility to leave them a better world. We can do this, people. We have to focus on diversity, which is the foundation of our success. We have to focus on the dynamism and channel it to be effective. We have to embrace mobility because we are in motion. We are headed toward a bright future. We just have to steer in the right direction. And we have to make sure that the benefits of everything we do don't just accrue to us or to the privileged, but to everyone. That's what makes America great. That's what we have to aspire to. We have lots of people in our history who have called to this. When the guns of Sumter fired, it was a much worse crisis than we're seeing in Washington. No one knew how that was all going to turn out. But Americans rose to that occasion, and they have more often than not. We've had some dark periods in our history when we've turned our backs on our fellow Americans. Let's not go down that road. Let's make America even greater. And let's start right here in Los Angeles. Thank you.